Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Hopefully, everyone's enjoying their lunch as we're proceeding with the working lunch plenary. Exposing bad behavior at sea, transparency, and countering malign influence operations. And to give his opening remarks, we request the Assistant Director General for Strategic Communications, National Security Council of the Philippines, Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. I understand it's a working lunch, so please continue with what you're doing. Distinguished colleagues, esteemed partners, and honored guests, it is with great honor to convene with all of you today to discuss a critical issue that affects not only our respective nations but the entire global community: the need to expose and counter bad behaviors at sea. It's a very interesting topic and the way it's phrased. As we discuss this topic, we significantly recognize that this challenge affects not only the Philippines, but also the security and stability of our region and the international community. The West Philippine Sea, part of the broader South China Sea, holds significant values across economic, ecological, geopolitical, cultural, and tourism aspects. In 2016, the arbitral ruling ruled in favor of the Philippines, affirming our sovereign rights within our EEZ. However, despite this clear legal decision, certain actors continue to disregard international norms, challenging our sovereignty, peace, and regional order. This issue is not just a matter of Philippine national interest, it concerns every nation committed to upholding a rules-based order and the sanctity of international law. Unfortunately, the waters of the West Philippine Sea have become a theater for malign influence operations. Foreign interference marked by disinformation campaigns and strategic narratives seek to mislead both our citizens and the global community. These operations exploit media platforms and other outlets to distort the truth, spread false claims, and create divisions. By clouding the facts and promoting alternative narratives, these efforts undermine stability, erode trust, and attempt to weaken our legitimate claims under international law. In response, the Philippines has developed an approach we call measured transparency. This strategy aims to counter disinformation and a commitment to clear, factual communication and enabling both our citizens and the international community to see the truth about activities in the West Philippine Sea. Through the National Task Force for West Philippine Sea, we have adopted several transparency measures, including embedding domestic and international media in resupply and other missions. We also host regular press briefings and issue press statements if there are incidents at sea, and we share verified information. And we are only able to do this through the support of the journalism sector, the international journalists and domestic journalists that work with us in implementing this policy. These initiatives ensure that our messaging remains consistent and fact-based, exposing unlawful activities without compromising our national security. Measured transparency is more than a communication strategy. It is also, in a way, a deterrent to those who attempt to manipulate narratives or project false information to justify incursions or hostile actions. By openly documenting and communicating events in the West Philippine Sea, we not only inform the public, but also send a message to those attempting to disrupt peace. The Philippines will not stand idle, nor will we allow falsehoods to go unchallenged. The Philippines is steadfast in its commitment to regional stability and security. We seek cooperation, not confrontation, dialogue, not division. Our actions are rooted in principles of peace and respect for international law, and we work with our neighbors and global partners to foster a secure and prosperous region. This commitment extends beyond our national interest. We understand that the stability of the South China Sea is vital to all who rely on these waters for trade, security, and environmental sustainability. Thus, our transparency efforts are intended to benefit the entire region, providing a framework for accountability that can serve as a responsible for responsive maritime governance. Let me also add that the transparency initiative itself is not the entire strategy. It is simply one of the tools that the Philippine government uses in order to advance its national interest. There seems to be a misimpression by some quarters that the transparency policy is a strategy in itself. I wish to clarify that the transparency initiative or policy is merely one of the tools that we use in concert with the other instruments of the country's national power. So it is not a standalone approach. It is used in conjunction with diplomatic efforts. It is used in conjunction with naval operations by our Philippine Navy. It is used in conjunction with other information operations in order to advance the Philippine national interest, as well as advance international law, the rule of law, and, of course, the rules-based international order. In closing, I urge each of you to reflect on the role we all can play in supporting transparency and countering malign influence in our shared maritime space. This is collective endeavor that requires cooperation from all nations that value stability and security in the Indo-Pacific. And I'd also like to add that the transparency initiative or the government's desire, the Philippine government's desire to expose bad behavior at sea would not have been successful or even possible if not for the support of the third estate, the media. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the international media that have come to the Philippines, who have increased their presence in the Philippines, who have upgraded their operations from merely a reporter to now a bureau, because they understand the importance of what we're doing and they are supporting us in all that we do. Thank you very much.
Once again, thank you very much, Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya, for the wonderful opening remark. And at this point, to introduce our panel chair, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the postdoctoral fellow, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Dr. Vic Tran.
Thank you, MC. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for spending your precious lunchtime with us today. So today, we have three excellent speakers with us, and we will proceed according to the program. So we will start with, so I will introduce all the speakers first, and then we will proceed. So we have Commander J. Terriera, Chief of the West Philippine Sea Transparency Office. The second speaker is Ms. Phương Thảo Nguyễn, a PhD candidate at the Osaka School of International Public Policy, Osaka University. And then, last but not least, Rear Admiral Katsuya Yamamoto, Program Director of Security Studies at Sasakawa Peace Foundation. So speakers will have 5 to 7 minutes. So what I will do is that I will set a timer for 6 minutes. So when you hear the bell, please wrap up in a few sentences. So Commander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Dick. I want to begin by highlighting that the People's Republic of China has effectively established its presence in the South China Sea through coercive and aggressive operations. Their presence is now a fait accompli. They occupied Mischief Reef in 1995, operationalized their nine-dash line presence in the recent years by seizing control of the Scarborough Shoal in 2012, reclaimed and militarized numerous maritime features since 2013. All of this were done by the People's Republic of China without firing a single shot. It is important to note that these actions were carried out without military confrontation. The only exception was being the killing of over 60 Vietnamese sailors in 1988 during the Johnson South Reef skirmish. Beijing has skillfully utilized a gray zone strategy through its maritime forces. The PLA Navy for intimidation, the China Coast Guard, and Chinese maritime militia for coercion and aggressive maneuver, employing threats and escalation to undermine international law and disregard universally accepted norms. This gray zone approach leaves Southeast Asian nations with two challenging choices: either to overlook China's persistent presence and aggressive behavior in our exclusive economic zones, or to deploy our own vessels to counter them. Many countries in the region, fearing potential repercussions, have opted for the former. Unfortunately, this passive stance has allowed China to alter the status quo, challenge the international rules-based order, and extend its influence over these nations. This apprehension of provoking China has effectively led us to permit their exploitation of our non-confrontational position, enabling an unchallenged culminated in filing unchallenged unchallenged whether to ignore or respond to China's presence in the region. I'll, I'll just use my phone. I messed up with the printing. Sorry.
So while we're waiting for the commander, I just want to say, because I see Greg sitting over there, and I think that I have to say that I'm also a adjunct fellow with the CSIS in DC. Thanks.
Culminated by filing a case against China in the Permanent Court of Arbitration in 2013. A significant victory was achieved in 2016 when the tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines, invalidating China's extensive territorial claims in the region. However, many legal scholars argue that the subsequent administration under President Rodrigo Duterte did not fully capitalize on this victory in its interactions with China, instead of using the ruling as a leverage. The Duterte administration sought to strengthen ties with China, raising concerns about potential erosion of the Philippines' hard-won rights. The shift in approach has sparked debates regarding the effectiveness of international law and the institutions that uphold it. Critics contend that the Philippines' decision to downplay the ruling and pursue closer relations with China has diminished the significance of its legal victory. This change is particularly ironic, given that the Philippines initially took a courageous step in bringing the case to international tribunal, positioning itself as a model for other nations facing similar dispute. The arbitration victory was celebrated as a triumph for international law and an affirmation of the importance of legal mechanism in resolving conflicts. When President Bongbong Marcos took office, he faced the challenge of developing a strategy that aligned with his commitment to ensure that not a single inch of our territory will be surrendered to any foreign power. To formulate this strategy, he needed to consider several key factors. First, he had to decide whether to ignore or respond to China's presence in the region. Second, he needed to find a way to reshape the perceptions of both domestic and international audiences regarding the significance of the arbitration victory. President Marcos recognized the necessity of carefully navigating the intricate dynamics of great power competition, all while remaining committed to protecting Philippine territory and upholding the international law. In response, the Transparency Initiative was launched. This strategic information operation aims to assert Philippine sovereignty while minimizing the risk of unnecessary escalation. By publicizing China's aggressive actions and illegal presence in the West Philippine Sea, the initiative seeks to raise awareness both domestically and internationally about the ongoing territorial dispute. This tactic is designed to harness public opinion and international pressure to deter further encroachment by China. By bringing these issues to light, the initiative could foster multilateral discussions involving other states that support international law. The Transparency Initiative is not intended to ignore or allow China to alter the status quo, nor it is meant to provoke or escalate the tension. Instead, it employs transparency and publicity as tools to protect Philippine interests and uphold international law. Since then, we have successfully transformed the Philippines' approach to reporting incidents in the South China Sea. We have moved from silently enduring the bullying tactics to adapting a more assertive stance in narrating and exposing China's illegal actions. Initially, it was mainly the Philippine Coast Guard that engaged with the media. However, as our Transparency Initiative gained traction and recognition, we achieved a significant milestone in our efforts. We now hold joint press conferences to include the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and the National Security Council. This collaborative approach in addressing incidents in the South China Sea is unprecedented and represents a major shift in our collective response. The Filipino people now can hear factual narratives directly from the national government, ensuring that the truth remains visible and unclouded. Secondly, our efforts to publicize compelling videos and images that accurately document China's illegal actions in the South China Sea have attracted international attention and condemnation. More countries are now voicing their criticism and standing in solidarity with us against Beijing's bullying tactics and blatant disregard for international law. Third, the national government's disclosure of Chinese aggression in the South China Sea has effectively raised public awareness among Filipinos. During the 6 years of the former Duterte administration, the country was divided in perception of China. The limited information available about the situation in the West Philippine Sea during his time allowed misinformation to spread in social media. As a result, many of the former president's supporters mistakenly viewed China as a good friend and a partner for peace and development. However, it is now clear that Filipinos, regardless of social status or political affiliation, whether they supported the Dutertes or the current president, we have already seen a united stand of the Filipino people. According to the latest Pulse Asia survey, 7 out of 10 Filipinos now will not support pro-China candidates in the upcoming 2025 midterm polls. Fourth, a key measure of our success in transparency is the recognition by the legislation of the patriotic duty and selfless service of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard. As we all know, the budget of these agencies have tremendously increased. In closing, I would like to reiterate that it is essential for the region to expose the aggressive actions of the People's Republic of China in the South China Sea. The incidents affecting the Philippines are mirrored by those faced by Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. If like-minded nations supporting the international rules-based order remain unaware, the People's Republic of China's unlawful actions will go unpunished. Transparency allows smaller countries to unite with others to challenge violations of international law, addressing beyond economic interests. The environmental damage caused by these activities of China has far-reaching consequences. The interconnectedness of maritime spaces necessitates action to protect our vital resources. Ultimately, transparency done is insufficient to counter China's aggression if that will only be the effort. While raising awareness is crucial, concrete actions are necessary to induce behavioral change for the People's Republic of China. In conclusion, I must underscore that the Philippines' struggle in the West Philippine Sea transcends our sovereignty. It is a matter of concern for all of us. Allowing China to disregard the rules-based order undermines the very foundation in which we all depend. If we permit such actions to continue, nations may lose sight of the reasons of the order was established and begin to question the significance of the international law. The erosion of respect for established norms could lead us to have a perilous era where might prevails over what is right. Therefore, I call upon you here, leading analysts and thought leaders, to take a stand, a principled stand, in favor of the rule of law and add to collective efforts to pressure bully countries in the world to respect international law. Their continued defiance poses a grave risk to the future of the younger generation. We must recognize that the global peace we currently enjoy is a hard-earned legacy born from the sacrifices of those who endured the horrors of war. It is our solemn duty to preserve and uphold this peace for the generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commander. So I realized that he couldn't hear my timer. So what I will do is that I would invite the next two speakers to set your own timers for 6 minutes, please. And while we wait, could you please set your timer? Yes, so while we wait, I would like to raise an issue for us to think about, and then if the next two speakers have any thought to add during their presentation, please feel free to do so. Up until recently, we used to turn to, photos and videos as reliable witness of what happened. But these days, with AI and deepfake, it's posed serious challenge to this understanding. And especially in February this year, OpenAI introduced their new model, translating from text to video. So even though this is not available to the public yet, but it will soon be available, then it will be pose serious challenge to our transparency initiative. So yes, if you're ready, Ms. Nguyen, please.
Hello. I'm Thang from Osaka University, and I'm doing research on China's influence operation and China disinformation operation targeting Vietnam. As part of my research is related to the situation in the South China Sea, so I hope that my talking here today may somehow can contribute to promote the Manila dialogue on the South China Sea. Well, when it comes to China's influence operations, China appears to be one of the most active players in this field, with the support of state-sponsored agencies and media. And China so far has made huge investment in cyberspace and information sector to control the discourse in international diplomatic forum. Well, however, the research so far just focused the issue on in democratic countries, but overlooking quite the cases, let's say Vietnam, which share quite a similar political system and strong censorship as China. So Vietnam appears to be one of the most interesting cases that worth investigating. Well, let's take a look at the Vietnamese media ecosystem. That Vietnam enjoys quite solid hedge that can protect its internal media environment, in which that a lot of media outlets plays as semi-mouthpiece of the Vietnamese government. And you can see at the graph, sure. the second one, except for this one, this is the domestic media platform in Vietnam. But others like the Western platform like Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook Messenger, or Instagram might be the fertile ground for the public. I mean, Vietnamese citizens to exchange the news and to do analysis. So here are some Vietnamese state-run media and press. When it comes to key factors of the Vietnamese media ecosystem, the main parties might be the strong regulation on press and media and the present availability of foreign marketers in Vietnam media environment, and especially Vietnamese government tries to make strong balance between in collaboration with the foreign partners in terms of media and communication. But however, there's still some kind of weaknesses that face Vietnamese government when it comes to the extreme nationalism, say xenophobia or China apprehension nationalistic sentiment. Or recently we witnessed the phenomena of anti-color revolution might be the case that would be exploited by the external evil actors. There are some strategic tactics that might be adopted by the external, say, Chinese state-sponsored media influence operation to target Vietnamese audience. So the first one is often be endorsing and misquoting high profiles, saying or the government's official narratives, say bamboo diplomacy or foreign policy that we often see. And the second one might be the recruitment of regional staffs that we use to examine in different countries. But say in Vietnam, in Hanoi, there is a case like Xinhua is still under examination. But let me make a quick update that in last October, Vietnamese government already signed a memorandum with China in promoting the collaboration between Vietnam and China in terms of media and communication. So in the future, we will expect to see more of the presence of Xinhua in Vietnam, say, for example. So these are trying to shape the narrative to spread some favorable news of China counter negative coverage effectively about China in front of the public. The main narratives of the People's Republic of China in Vietnam might be that Vietnam and China have shared heritage and they're willing to set aside the difference to pursue greater cooperation. And China is more responsible and more constructive compared to the US. And Vietnam collaboration with external partners will never help Vietnam to solve the issue in the South China Sea. Here's some of the Chinese media penetration into Vietnam media ecosystem. And so I want to show some contingent in the past so far. In 2016, for example, China Daily or Xinhua or Renminhua, which we say people.cn, used to cover the distort quotation about what then Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc say about the situation on the South China Sea. And others like China Daily once covered in distorted news about Vietnam's maritime construction or fabricated information about South China Sea in Chinese textbook, and other emission distort information also on the case, say, South China Sea. And recently we witnessed the case that, interestingly, that there one evil effort tried to target Vietnam via the Philippine expert, and Global Times also covered the same time. These are somewhat I collected from the last September incident between Vietnamese missing fishing boat and the Chinese law enforcement on the South China Sea. While Global Times covered quite the one-sidedly way about the case on the South China Sea, which covered the news one side from Reuters. But let's take a look at the semi media sources on, say, WeChat or Weibo, we can see that there are a lot of kind of narratives with distorted information about the case in Vietnam, and say others like people try to spread distorted information about the case. So, because of the limitation of the time, I will wrap it up in 2 points that there's still a lot of tactics that's still under examination. And we need to build more administrative, systematic countermeasure body within countries in the region, etc., especially to counter the issue at this time. Say pre-bunk or debunk, say very important. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. And now we will move to Rear Admiral Yamamoto, please. And please have your timer ready.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Vic. I am from Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Japan, and I am retired Japanese sailor. Also, in this dialogue, several speakers mentioned China's maritime militia activities. I'm afraid I may be bore you all. However, now I would like to discuss about the China maritime militia from the other point of view today. My agenda is very simple. So simple. Is China's maritime militia also has a duty to understand and respect the use in battle. As you know, China's militia is a genuine Chinese armed forces as defined by the domestic law of the People's Republic of China. In terms of the military activities, the international community should understand that China's militia has the same military status as the sailors and soldiers of the People's Liberation Army and the People's Armed Police Forces, including the China's Coast Guard. Of course, China and the Chinese grassroots peoples must want the international community to regard and respect its militia units and the militia members as the armed forces as combatants on the equal status as the People's Liberation Armies and the PAP. Unfortunately, however, China's maritime militia do not respect the obligations they have assumed as a combatant under the international laws, regulations, and manners. China's domestic law requires the militia to wear uniform and insignia as a combatant. However, these are only used during the training or exercise period, and in many cases, when confronted with the foreign vessels or fishermen, the Chinese militia do not wear their uniforms, do not raise the military ensign flag, and cannot be identified from the ordinary fishermen and fishing boats. In addition, the militia have not received the minimum education and training in the international humanitarian law that is essential for military personnel. I heard this from many Chinese friends of mine. Chinese media often report that many fishermen prioritize their individual profit and material desires. Fishermen do not understand their duty, militia's duty, and missions as missions. And that the military sub-district of PLA and local government of China are at a loss when it comes to training and managing this militia. Recently, the operation itself has been strictly controlled by the authorities through the Beidou satellite navigation system. However, it seems that they are unable to control the feeling of each individual members of the militia, Chinese local fishermen. As a result, the harassment of foreign fishermen and the Coast Guard by the maritime militia is like a wild blood on the street of the Chinese cities. So street fighting by Chinese mafia-like. Their performance are extremely barbaric, such as wielding a butcher knife. There is no minimum respect for humanity that soldiers should observe. So I was a retired military. All of the military personnel in the world, we have to the education and training of what important is humanity, what we have to shoot, we have to respect the international humanitarian law. The main reason for the kind of behavior by the Chinese militia is that they have not received sufficient education and training in the international law, which is necessary for military personnel. The international community must strongly request that China provide the education and training for their Chinese militia. History of human being has repeatedly shown that even professional soldiers who have received a solid education can lose sight of humanity and cause tragedy in extreme situation. Since even professional soldiers can do this, it is even more important for part-time soldiers, the militia, to receive a thorough education and training that will also protect the human rights of the militia itself. Finally, I would like to add one point about the human rights of the militia themselves. China has developed its maritime militia to the front line of the disputed area in the South China Sea. The militia is deployed even further forward than the PLA Navy and the Chinese Coast Guard beyond. These militiamen, ignorant of the international law, militiamen have recklessly conflicted with foreign maritime law enforcement agency, resulting in casualties. The Chinese authority and their media have prized the militia members who have been killed or injured in conflict with foreign law enforcement agency as patriots and heroes, and reported them as example to be followed. I call this situation everywhere if invited me. I call them human shield at sea. Human shield at sea. China maritime militia activities are tragedy not only for the international community, but also for the Chinese people. I understand. I stop my argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Rear Admiral. So now I would like to open the discussion to the floor. So I see one card over there. Yeah, please start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is addressed to Mr. Yamamoto. I fully understand that it is very important and necessary for us to make militia to obey the obligations of jus in bello. But before that, we need to find militia. And going back to 2016 incident, a few hundred of Chinese fishing boats came to Japanese jurisdictional sea areas. And my dear friend James have discussed this issue in his excellent papers, but it is too difficult to make definite decision that they are militia. Actually, in that incident, Japanese government never ever declared that they were militia. So I would like to ask your opinion. How can we find practically militia in the incident concretely? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I totally agree with James Clark's dimensions and reported. I very understand it. So even the militia, because the militia, Chinese militia is one part of the armed forces of Chinese People's Republic of China. So even the militia has to respect and have to obey the international law. So however, that incident time, so the Chinese militia is not to respect the international order, no wear the uniform, no rising the flag post. So just is the performance is the illegal fisherman. It's not militia. So I understand. So the different part of the I'm not the IUU, but the different part of the IUU. So not only Japan, but also the international committee to deal with these illegal fishermen as offense subject. So this is not, they are not have the status of the combatant. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I would like to make my question clearer. Just simply, I would like to ask you how to find militia in the actual incident of many fishing boats coming to Japanese jurisdictional sea areas. That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. So unfortunately, the Japanese government did not decide it yet how to deal with the militia. But my individual comment is my comment is the fight against the hostility. Our government can use the force for defense of our country, I think.
Okay, so before we continue, I would like to have a clarification from Dr. Ordenio, because we started late, so I wonder when we should end the session. Yeah, so the current schedule, we have until 1:45.
Plus 30 minutes.
So we end at 2?
2:15.
2:15, okay, thank you. So now I will take two questions at once, and please identify yourself before asking the question. So I see the two here, Aristio and Mr. Lancaster. Yeah.
Right, thank you very much, Aristio from Indonesia. My questions goes to Commodore Tarela. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing the Philippine experience. I have a couple of questions. So the first one is that how do you measure the success of the Transparency Initiative program? Are there any statistics on the number of intrusion and escalations before and after the transparency program? And the second one is that how does the business community or the private sector's oil drill company view such a policy? Because the reason why Jakarta has been trying to avoid megaphone diplomacy, as they say, is that because they're afraid that it might scare the oil drilling companies, as we might see that some of the drilling companies has left the Vietnams. So Jakarta has been trying, feared of that reason. So how do you view, or how does the business community view such a transparency initiative policies in the Philippines? Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josiah from the Philippines. I am with Pacific Forum's Young Leaders Program. So my question is addressed to all panelists. My question goes, what concrete steps can governments in the region effectively take to address or counter even state and non-state sponsored misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation drives that may include the propagation of deepfakes or other AI-generated or AI-enabled online content? Thank you.
Okay, so please, the speakers.
Thank you. Regarding the first question, how are we going to measure the success of the transparency efforts in the Philippine government? Again, this transparency initiative has two main objectives. That is to create awareness of the Filipino people and for the international community to also understand what is at stake in the West Philippine Sea due to the aggressive actions of the People's Republic of China. And if we're going to use that as our threshold in measuring our success, as I said, due to the awareness of the Filipinos, based on the recent polls, more than 83% of the Filipinos won't be voting for any pro-China candidates by 2025, this coming midterm election. At the same time, more Filipinos are becoming more supportive and aware of what's really happening in the West Philippine Sea, unlike the previous administration wherein there is a very limited information. So in terms of awakening the sense of patriotism and the knowledge of the Filipinos about what is happening, that is the first measuring stick that we have for the domestic audience. Now, for the international community, how can we say we are effective with this transparency? As what was discussed a while ago with all the ambassadors here present, we were able to inform the international community, and not just our traditional allies, but even other countries from the European Union are expressing their criticism and condemnation every time that there are incidents that are happening. For your second question, how does the business sector see the transparency effort? Well, honestly, there are some Filipino Chinese who express dissent and somewhat discouraging this kind of overexposure of Chinese aggressive action. But for the Philippine government, we still look at this as our strategy in getting the support of all those who are in different sectors of the society. And if you're going to ask me whether we have experienced economic coercion, as you might be probably wondering, I don't think that it has impacted our economic relationship with the People's Republic of China. It has been very clear for the Philippine government that our engagement with China in terms of our issue in the West Philippine Sea and our trade relationship are two different things. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to answer to the Madam Kanehara-san. So my answer is very clear. If China, the Chinese government, does not recognize that kind of the incident as a militia activities, Japan should be the deal with the criminals, domestic criminal action by the law enforcement. However, if China does recognize them as a militia activities, we, Japanese government and Japan, should be the deal with as a national defense. This is my answer. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Malaya, would you like to add something?
Thank you. I'd like to address the second question about the integrity of the information space in the light of AI and deepfakes. This really is troubling and a cause for concern for many of us who work in communications, because what's happening right now is really a battle of narratives. It's an information war, and the conflict in the South China Sea is not only happening at sea, it is also happening in the information space. So it is very critical that we protect the integrity of the information environment. Now, it's a very complex question that requires some kind of a complex answer as well, but let me simplify by answering you on two levels. Number one, since we are part of government and we have access to all of the information as to what's happening at sea, our experience has been, if there is deep fakes, if there are misinformation or malinformation or foreign malign influence, the tactic is to answer immediately. because based on our experience, whoever releases first the video or whatever gets to get the headlines, not only in the domestic media but the international media. That is how the media operates. No? So if, for example, the PRC is the first to say that the Philippines intruded into their territory, then the first headline will be Philippine vessels intruded into Chinese territory and that the Chinese effectively regulated the movement of Philippine vessels. So number one, you should answer rapidly, and number two, do not let any form of misinformation go unchallenged. Because the moment you let that go unchallenged, it becomes fact. And if it is repeated, numerous times by the malign influence operators, then it becomes an established truth, even if it's not. The second answer to your question is also building resilience in the community. Building resilience. And how do you do that? You can do that by doing awareness campaigns, advocacy campaigns, doing media literacy programs for your constituents. You ask your people to trust only legitimate sources. And finally, you work with CSOs and non-governmental organizations for them to do fact-checking. Sometimes a government has a lot of work to do, and it's important that NGOs and CSOs also do their part in upholding the truth. And they can do this by doing fact-checking of any form of misinformation or foreign malign influence.
Thank you, Mr. Malaya. So I have a new update from the organizer that we will end at 2 p.m. sharp because we need to proceed to the next panel immediately. So we have less than 15 minutes. So I would like to take question from Vice Admiral Chauhan. And then the next person is in the corner there, Fura. Yes, thank you, please.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. I'd like to ask two questions. One of them is to Commodore Tariella. And it really builds on what Dharmanand said, but it addresses a different audience. No military will agree to fire the first shot of anything that might lead to a hot war unless it has first shaped the external environment in which it wishes to operate. And therefore, our effort always, and I commend the Transparency Initiative, I have no quarrel with it at all, I think it's marvelous. Our effort is always to be able to tell the People's Republic of China that the time is not right today. You haven't shaped the environment. And tomorrow, we should be able to tell the People's Republic of China that you haven't shaped the environment and therefore the time is not right today. And every day, you should be able to say that, and the time will never be right. For this to happen, the deterrence mechanisms that are in place include all the features that you've spoken about and which were spoken about in the earlier session with the ambassadors. But my question is, what is the correct metric that will enable you to conclude that this message of deterrence going across to Beijing and not to the internal, I understand the importance of the internal audience within the Philippines to come to a recognition of the seriousness of the situation, the facts on the ground, exposing the international community to the facts as they exist. But ultimately, all this must be registered in the minds of the people who are controlling the PLA in all its organs, right from the Coast Guard, militia, and the Navy. So what metric might you think will work for that, and how would you know that the strategic message that you are sending out is indeed the strategic message which is being received in Beijing? My second question is actually to...
Sorry, Vice
Okay,
Admiral.
only one question.
Yes,
Okay,
so
fine.
one for now, please, for everyone. And just to remind you to please keep your question clear and short. Okay, the next person, please. This corner.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm Kentaro Furia of Grapes in Tokyo. My question, actually I have a very quick question to Maria. You said major transparency and strategic communication in your slide. I wonder if this name or the term is officially used by the Philippine government. If so, is there any documents that the Philippine government issued for this particular name? These are my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, you would like to start first?
Thank you, Admiral Chahan, for a very complicated question. But let me be very honest and blunt. Our objectives of the transparency effort doesn't really, but I got your point. You are asking how effective the transparency is in reaching out to the audience on mainland China, for those people who are carrying out these aggressive and unlawful actions in the West Philippine Sea. But again, let me highlight the objectives of the transparency. They are not part of our audience because we believe that people from the PLA Navy, the Chinese Coast Guard, or even the Chinese Maritime Militia, they won't really care about the transparency efforts that we are doing now. Even if we keep on telling them that they are the ones carrying out illegal or aggressive actions in the entire South China Sea, even if Indonesia, Malaysia, or Vietnam will also do the same thing, not a single member of the PLA Navy will listen to any ASEAN nation about it. It's because their chain of command has always been the Chinese, party. So I wish I could have a very good response. How can I be able to reach out to those people in mainland China to convince them to put a pressure to their own government to stop the aggression in the entire South China Sea? But that's just my wish. Again, transparency efforts can only reach out to those people who upholds the rule of law, who believes in the international law, and who's really willing to maintain a much more respect to the rules-based order that we all enjoy. Regarding the question of Furuya Sensei, the Transparency Initiative of the Philippine government in exposing these actions, there are no official document that would really say that whether it's a transparency initiative or a measured transparency or assertive transparency that Ray Powell has always been using. But again, for the National Security Council, we just don't want to use assertive because for us, it is transparency. It's either you are measured, but you're not overly asserting, because it would appear you are exaggerating the facts. So for us, it's just transparency initiative.
Okay. Let me just add. We do have some sort of document, but it is not for public consumption, right? We have an internal document about our communications program, our campaign plan, and what are the extent of the transparency policy. Officially, we call it the measured transparency policy. No, it is not assertive. It is not. It is not something else, but it is called measured. As to the question about the Chinese audience as a important stakeholder in our communications effort, I agree to a certain extent with what Commodore Tariela said, that it's very difficult to utilize regular communication objectives and protocols with regard to the regular Chinese citizens because of the control of the PRC over the communication channels in the mainland. However, we consider the Chinese government as a stakeholder, as an audience. So our responses when we prepare our statements coming from the Philippines, we do realize that the Chinese government is also an audience, and we craft our messages specifically not only for the international community, but also for the Chinese government, because the communications aspect is simply one of the tools we use in conjunction with diplomatic efforts, socio-economic and other operations and other instruments that are available to the Philippine government.
So I would like to invite the rest of the participants to raise their questions, and then each speaker will have 1 minute either to choose one question to answer or to give some closing remark. So in the orders that I see, Aaron first, and then next will be on this side, Mr. Asana, and then Benjamin, and then the next one is James, and then Anh Dang, and then the last one will be Galan. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Bick. My question is for ADG Malaya, sir. Sir, I don't know if you're at liberty to answer this question, but since you're from the government, sir, I wanted to grab the opportunity to ask po. Sir, not too long ago, against the backdrop of increasing pressure on the U.S. to demonstrate allied support, the Indo-Pacific Commander, Admiral Samuel Paparo, said that they are willing to escort Philippine resupply missions. But the Marcos government, sir, rejected this proposition of the United States. Why do you think this is the case, sir, considering that we've sought greater support from the U.S. by expanding the number of EDCA sites and by increasing the number of military exercises with them, sir? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question to Ms. Nguyen. I'm interested about the media that you mentioned about. Now we understand that the young generation, especially Gen Z, for example, the span of attention is getting less and less. So they rely so much on media, like audiovisual media. So on one side, it can be utilized as a propaganda, whatever you call it, but on the other hand, it is actually the main media that we should rely on when it comes to delivering information. So what do you think about this situation with regards to the South China Sea? Thank you so much.
Thank Mr. Arsama, if I may,
Ms. Nguyen,
for your question.
can we take over the question first, and then you can choose to answer which one? Okay.
Right.
So Benjamin, please. Also, okay, so we will move to James first, or, oh, okay,
No,
okay, okay.
no, it's good. So my question is addressed to either Commodore Tariela or Assistant Director General Manaya. So for a long time, Malaysia was sometimes the Philippines were sometimes criticized as having this megaphone diplomacy. This was one of the ways that the transparency campaign was deemed. But now that some countries are actually copying the Philippines or trying to have their own sort of campaign of transparency, would you say that it's a proof nowadays that you were actually right before everyone? And second of all, I just wondered if you had considered sharing your expertise or establishing some kind of informal forum between those countries to actually exchange about your initiatives and methods?
And James?
Thank you. The question is in particular for ADG Malaya and Commodore Tariela. And the question is, have you considered or is it part of your communication strategy to utilize or leverage the agencies of the United Nations, such as the International Maritime Organization, the Food and Agricultural Organization, if there's cyber attacks, the International Telecommunications Union, FAO, for example, for fishing vessels, IMO for collision regulations. Ukraine has utilized all of these UN agencies in order to file papers complaining about Russian unlawful activities, and just wonder whether the Philippines or even other countries might use the same channels. Over.
Anh Dang.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Bick. I would like to have a question to Dr. Phương Thao. Did you notice any concrete influence of Chinese propaganda in these media with the Vietnamese people? Thank you.
Mr. Galang?
Thank you. My question is for Ms. Nguyen and Admiral Yamamoto. What lessons can the Philippines learn from your respective countries in addressing malign foreign influence operations, not just with respect to public opinion, but in particular influencing the outcome of domestic political processes? Thank you.
Okay, so now each speaker will have only 30 seconds to answer, so please pick one question addressed to you. Yeah, thank you. Please start.
Okay, what can I say in 30 seconds? Okay, we appreciate the offer of the United States to escort our resupply missions, and we have relayed this to the United States that we understand why they are making that offer. However, it was the decision of the Philippine government to keep all of our resupply missions, especially to Ayungin Shoal, done by Philippine vessels, manned by Philippine crew, and under Philippine supervision. And I think we were proven right. We were proven right because after the June 7 incident, wherein one of the Filipino sailors had their finger cut off, this led to the successful bilateral consultation mechanism. And the BCM between the Philippines and China led to a preliminary understanding. And this understanding, fortunately, up to now, still holds. And we are very positive that in the next missions, it will hold. So it is possible for the Philippines, without superpower help, to be able to settle some of these issues. Of course, not all, but some of these issues. And I think the Philippine government took the right track, because bringing in the United States in these resupply missions, I think, will be seen as a real provocative action. You know, we've always been accused by China of being provocative, but in our position, it is not. But bringing in the navy of a foreign superpower into a Philippine mission, I think, will really escalate issues with the People's Republic of China.
Well, yeah. First of all, the question of Mr. Blandin, I think even without us convincing any Southeast Asian countries to replicate the transparency, we really believe that we are doing the right thing. So regarding your question, are we willing to share our experience with our ASEAN neighbors about transparency? Definitely, we're doing that. For the Coast Guard, we're reaching out with our Coast Guard counterparts in these countries for them to be able to expose these unlawful and aggressive actions in the entire South China Sea.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Question to me. I think I would like to answer the question of Mr. Asana first. That you mentioned about the situation that when today they can see the young people spend more time in terms of playing on kind of scrolling the internet, social media, rather than focus on the official news. And that is kind of, I mean, it's kind of difficult issue for not only the young and the government, because that is not to say that the young generation does not have enough well-knowledge understanding about history, about the situation or everything. But I may say, like, everybody will never know what is behind the story or the mechanism behind that evil scheme of influence, operation, and disinformation. So that is what to say that media literacy and education is very important for the government to come closer to approach, to talk with people, especially the young people. And in terms of legislature, we also need to consider issue in this aspect. Well, one more quick comment that I want to add to your comment about not only Gen Z, but when it comes to our research about influence operation and disinformation operation, we need to say that not only young generation, but other people, like people who are not really have enough understanding about the media literacy, who are not have enough capability to access the truth, I mean reliable information, like the you can access to the information like the unpaid resources, right? That is free. So that is will not be reliable, and rely more on media, which are, we understand that those are the resources have not the gatekeeper, so that is also unreliable. Thank you.
Okay, please. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Now I am focusing about the internal propaganda operation, influence operation, and information operation to the Chinese local citizens by the Chinese national authority. So I'm concerning about that there is a widening gap between the external perception by the Chinese local citizens and our international community's perception. This is a very serious this will be the very serious trigger for the next tragedy steps. My answer is there.
Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground today, and please join me to thank the speakers.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We will just have a quick photo with our panel together with our panel chair, and we will continue with our next set of panels. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'ams and sirs. Now we'd like to request our staff to assist our next set of panels. We will be continuing right after. Thank you very much.